Hello, dear viewers. Today we're diving into a thrilling and dark tale that unfolded in a small English town back in 1946. It's a story rich with mysteries, loss, and upheaval. We're going to introduce you to a young teacher named Elizabeth, her enigmatic acquaintance, and how one single day can irrevocably change the lives of so many. Get ready for unexpected twists that will make you ponder the fact that sometimes those closest to us harbor deep, dark secrets. Let's begin. In a quaint English town nestled by a picturesque lake, there lived Elizabeth Marsh, a 24-year-old teacher. She was not only admired for her dedication to her students, but also for her love of photography. Elizabeth enjoyed capturing the beauty of the world around her, often spending her evenings strolling along the shore, snapping pictures of nature. This passion became an integral part of her life, as she used her photographs as teaching materials to inspire her students to appreciate the beauty in their surroundings. However, everything changed with the arrival of Jonathan Brown, a new resident in town. He moved in from London, and his presence immediately raised eyebrows among the locals. Jonathan was a 29-year-old man with a mysterious past. Almost nothing was known about him. His gloomy aura and introverted nature bred distrust among Elizabeth's friends. Despite this, she found herself drawn to him, perhaps believing that within his reserved demeanor lay intriguing secrets. Their interactions unfolded against the backdrop of familiar town scenery and the subtle pragmatism of post-war life. After passing by her house a few times, Jonathan began visiting Elizabeth more frequently, and soon they were spending time together discussing literature and art. However, her friends grew concerned as they noticed Elizabeth becoming much more withdrawn, rarely sharing details about her life. This raised red flags about the safety of her new acquaintance. Elizabeth Marsh, a respected teacher at a local school, lived in a charming house by the lakeside, surrounded by blooming gardens and lush trees. Her mornings always began with walks along the shore, capturing nature in photographs that set a positive tone for her day. It's no surprise that Elizabeth was the life of the party, often organizing picnics and photo shoots for her students and friends. Her best friend, Marianne Watson, 25, was an energetic young woman who embraced every adventure Elizabeth proposed. The two had been friends since childhood, sharing countless experiences from schooling to first crushes. Marianne was supportive of Elizabeth's newfound passion for photography, cheering her on in contests. However, ever since Jonathan Brown came into the picture, she noticed a shift in Elizabeth's behavior. Elizabeth had become more reserved and rarely opened up about her feelings. On Monday, when Elizabeth didn't show up for work again, Marianne sensed something was seriously wrong. She knew her friend would never skip classes without a valid reason. Elizabeth was always dignified and committed to her responsibilities, known for her kindness and dedication. Marianne recalled how Elizabeth had hesitantly shared her experiences with Jonathan, her eyes growing increasingly wary. Unable to wait until the end of the workday, Marianne decided to check on Elizabeth. Approaching her house, anxiety bubbled to the surface. The door was slightly ajar, and an unsettling feeling washed over her as she neared. She knocked, but there was no answer. Stepping inside, the sight that greeted her heightened her fears. The house appeared normal, books on shelves, photographs on walls, yet Elizabeth was nowhere to be found. Unwashed dishes lay on the table, next to an unfinished art history book. Everything suggested that Elizabeth had left in a hurry, clearly troubled by something. Marianne searched every room and quickly sensed something significant was missing from the house. There were no sounds of life, no music, no cooking. Elizabeth, always brimming with energy and vitality, had vanished without a trace. Overcome with anxiety, Marianne decided to act fast. She called the local police station to report her friend's disappearance, detailing recent events, including mentions of Jonathan. At first, the police approached the investigation cautiously, suggesting that Elizabeth might have just taken a weekend trip. However, as each hour passed without news, their initial assumptions became more unsettling. Elizabeth's friends, including Marianne, gathered to discuss the situation and brainstorm ways to help. They did everything possible to dispel their fears and restore hope, asking neighbors and checking Elizabeth's usual routes. Marianne felt a strong responsibility to take action, especially given her close bond with Elizabeth. With each passing day, the tension grew. When Marianne Watson reported her friend Elizabeth's disappearance to the police, she expected her serious concerns to be taken seriously. However, despite her persistent attempts to garner attention to the case, the officers informed her that such matters take time to investigate. They advised her to wait another 3 days before active searches would commence. This response wasn't shocking. A small town with low crime rates rarely encountered such incidents. Marianne left the station feeling anxious, but clinging to the hope that her friend had simply gone away for the weekend to escape the daily grind. Still, she was convinced that something was terribly wrong. Those 3 days dragged on, and Marianne used the time to organize searches among acquaintances and neighbors. She went door to door, inquiring if anyone had seen Elizabeth or noticed anything unusual in her behavior leading up to her disappearance. On the 3rd day, with no news to report, the police finally kicked off search operations. The leading detectives began focusing their efforts around the lake area since Elizabeth was known for her walks along its shores. They organized a search party involving local volunteers eager to help, preparing everything necessary from boats to special gear for deeper water work. Search teams scoured the shoreline, covering every trail and nook where Elizabeth might have passed, but the results were disheartening. As the police found no clues, the hope that Elizabeth had merely gotten lost began to fade. Watching the contingent of officers, Marianne felt a crushing sense of helplessness. During one of the reconnaissance missions, a detective, discussing recent missing person cases, casually dropped into a local bar where he chit-chatted with a regular local who shared gossip about what was happening in town. During their conversation, he mentioned seeing Jonathan Brown near the lake just days before Elizabeth's disappearance. He also spoke of strange occurrences and the tangled rumors surrounding Jonathan's dark past in London. Had this offhand remark about Jonathan piqued the detectives' interest, prompting them to start their own investigation into him. The next day, detectives began gathering information about Jonathan Brown, looking into his behavior, habits, and any connections he might have had with the missing woman. Reports and witness questionnaires flooded in to uncover how this classic new resident could be linked to Elizabeth's vanishing. They traced his movements from the days leading up to her disappearance. The data collection revealed that Jonathan had been frequently spotted near Elizabeth's home and had displayed a certain friendliness, putting him a step closer to her than other townspeople. Nevertheless, the specifics of his connection to Elizabeth remained murky. This investigative process led them to delve into his background, including photos and relationships with locals, to uncover his true intentions. For instance, while assessing his social contacts, they discovered that he had also been linked to another woman's disappearance in London, which stirred further discussions among the detectives. As the search efforts continued, more intriguing and shocking elements began to unfold. A clearer picture emerged, suggesting that Elizabeth's disappearance could involve deeper and more dreadful circumstances than initially believed. In this new context, the police prepared to conduct their first interrogation of Jonathan Brown to determine what he truly knew or might be hiding. Once the police launched their investigation, Jonathan Brown remained uneasy with detectives. His behavior and frequent appearances at Elizabeth's home raised their suspicions. Though he denied any involvement in her disappearance, information about him kept accumulating, creating fog and uncertainty around his true character. As the investigation progressed, the detectives compiled information on Jonathan from various sources, interviewing neighbors and acquaintances in hopes of uncovering even the smallest details that might illuminate his character. The police's renewed search of Elizabeth's home uncovered hidden clues during the investigation. Among the findings was a torn piece of Elizabeth's clothing discovered in the bushes near the lake's edge. This unsettling discovery significantly heightened the detectives' concerns and pushed them to delve deeper into both the circumstances of her disappearance and the mystery surrounding Jonathan. Alongside this analysis, the investigative team decided to canvass the areas surrounding Elizabeth's home that Marianne had mentioned in her statement. They scoured the trails leading to the lake and the waters themselves. Many locals, upon learning of the search efforts, volunteered to help scare the shoreline and even took to boats with specialized underwater equipment to assist. Their participation fostered a sense of unity within the community, but it also raised the specter of a potentially tragic outcome. In addition to the water searches, detectives reviewed available surveillance footage from around the area. They confirmed that, in the days leading up to her disappearance, Elizabeth frequently walked alone by the lake. The shoe prints discovered near the bushes suggested that someone might have followed her along that path shortly after she had gone missing, but no concrete evidence connected Jonathan to her disappearance yet. As days passed, the search efforts continued without any breakthroughs. Surveillance on Jonathan intensified, and he was now considered the primary suspect. However, his responses during interrogations remained evasive and confusing. He claimed to have seen Elizabeth just before her disappearance, but his constant presence in the area raised suspicions about his motives and potential intentions. His manner of speaking and actions left detectives puzzled, complicating their attempts to tie him to her vanishing. On the sixth day of searching, as hope began to dwindle, investigators received an unexpected tip from a local fisherman. He reported suspicious items drifting toward the shore near an old dock, where Elizabeth often visited. This lead was a turning point, prompting the detectives to check the provided coordinates. Underwater search teams, comprised of skilled divers and investigators, set to work at the indicated location. As they scoured the area, they came across a scattering of bottles, debris, and junk. After hours of intensive work, they stumbled upon something much more significant. Beneath the surface, among the weeds and silt, they discovered a body. It was Elizabeth. The initial examination of the body confirmed that the incident had not been voluntary. Signs of violence and extensive trauma indicated foul play. This discovery sent shockwaves through the entire community, forcing the reality of the tragedy to sink in. Elizabeth's reappearance underscored that her disappearance was not accidental, but possibly deliberate. Soon, the police began to gather evidence for a potential trial, preparing to charge Jonathan as the primary suspect. The community was engulfed in shock and horror at what had transpired right before their eyes. To Marianne and Elizabeth's other friends, upon hearing the devastating news of her fate, began to realize that their lives would never be the same again. Conversations about Elizabeth, her life, and her dreams now intertwined with fear and sorrow. The investigation persisted, with local police zeroing in on Jonathan Brown as they meticulously analyzed every step he had taken in recent weeks to uncover his true character. Determined to clarify the circumstances surrounding Elizabeth Marsh's disappearance, detectives called Jonathan Brown in for another round of questioning. This was prompted not only by ongoing suspicions about his character, but also by the discovery of Elizabeth's torn clothing near the lake, adding weight to the question of his involvement. Just as in previous interrogations, this one took place in a spacious police office, adorned with photos from various cases, each telling its own story. Sitting at the table, Jonathan appeared anxious, his face pale, and his hands fidgeting nervously at the table's edge. He lacked the usual confidence he had shown in past sessions. Taking advantage of the moment, the police began asking about his whereabouts on the day of Elizabeth's disappearance and about their alleged meetings. Initially, he struggled to maintain composure and responded reluctantly, but under the pressure of the detectives' questions, Jonathan soon began to lose control. At one point during the interrogation, when a detective asked Jonathan about his feelings for Elizabeth, he unexpectedly blurted out that the voices in his head commanded him to act. This revelation left everyone in the room stunned. It seemed like a moment of desperation, hinting at delusions or mental health issues, but it also sparked a new wave of questions about his psychological state and what he truly meant. Investigators quickly realized that Jonathan's words could significantly impact the case. Such statements could indicate a troubled mind or be a ploy to evade responsibility. His claims became a central topic of discussion among the detectives, who now paid closer attention to his mental condition. Following legal protocols, Jonathan was scheduled for a forensic psychiatric evaluation. The town was left reeling from this newly uncovered information. Friends of Elizabeth and local residents faced the harsh reality that their once peaceful and safe community was on the brink of tragedy. Every community, no matter how small, relies on mutual trust, and this initial sense of security was suddenly called into question. Marianne Watson and other friends of Elizabeth struggled to comprehend how someone they knew could be linked to such a horrific fate. Rumors and conversations spread rapidly throughout the town. Some claimed Jonathan might be a monster, hiding his abuses behind a facade of normalcy. Others whispered about concerns regarding his mental health. Simultaneously, a few speculated whether Elizabeth might have found herself in a compromising situation that led to her disappearance. However, most residents couldn't fathom that their kind and compassionate teacher could find herself entangled in such a grim reality. As detectives intensified their investigation into Jonathan's mental state, they also began to look into his past. The information gathered from various sources prompted them to focus on his brief connections with others, who could potentially serve as witnesses. Yet this step yielded mixed reactions. Some people insisted that Jonathan was just fine, receiving routine medical care, and they couldn't reconcile this with any implications of mental instability. While detectives worked through this new turn in the case, they began examining potential links between Jonathan and the local community, going door to door and documenting anyone who might know him. This effort helped identify not only potential witnesses, but also others who might have insights into Elizabeth's fate. Some emerged as potential sources who could shed light on the events leading up to her disappearance. Every new piece of information regarding Jonathan and his interactions with Elizabeth acted like a domino effect in the small town. The words he spoke during interrogations pieced together a troubling atmosphere, where even casual conversations seemed to hint at shocking truths. The town lived in anticipation, eager to uncover the reality behind this tragic narrative, while investigators braced themselves to expose dark secrets that could have repercussions for both Jonathan and the wider community. The trial of Jonathan Brown became one of the most talked about cases in the town's history, drawing attention not only from locals but also from media outlets in surrounding areas. Court sessions were packed with people who gathered in solidarity, eager to express how deeply Elizabeth Marsh's tragedy impacted their hearts and lives. Each new day of the trial brought shocking details shared through testimonies, evidence, and fragments of information gathered by detectives. Throughout the proceedings, the prosecution relentlessly presented evidence of Jonathan's guilt DNA testing, items recovered from the scene of Elizabeth's demise, and his own admissions about the voices in his head attempting to evoke remorse from the defendant. In contrast, the defense worked to portray him as a man suffering from mental illness, forging the image of an insane criminal who wasn't fully accountable for his actions. Psychiatric evaluations conducted during the trial confirmed that Jonathan exhibited certain pathologies. However, the court also took into account clear evidence of his sanity at the time of the crime. As the trial concluded, many perceived the verdict as just. Jonathan Brown was found guilty of Elizabeth Marsh's murder and sentenced to death. This ruling sparked heated discussions and ripples of emotion through the small town. For many residents, there was a sense of relief that justice had been served, but a profound awareness of loss lingered. So sorrow and fear stemming from Elizabeth's tragic fate left a lasting impact on the community, which confronted the realization that evil can lurk behind even the brightest faces. The town's journey towards healing became the next chapter following the trial's conclusion. The place that had once been filled with life and joy now resonated with pain and tears. People began gathering, conversing about the importance of being mindful of those around them and not ignoring warning signs. Elizabeth's dreams of a future as a photographer, the moments she captured through her lens, became a symbol of the reality that the world isn't always safe, and shadows can hide beneath the light. At a mourning gathering attended by residents, one of Elizabeth's friends uttered a brief yet profound statement, "You never know who hides behind a smile." This phrase echoed through the hearts of the townspeople, becoming a sort of mantra that reminded them of the importance of openness, honesty, and timely awareness of changes in the behavior of those around them. The town began taking steps towards recovery as they embarked on the healing process. Memory projects emerged to honor Elizabeth's creativity and passion for photography, creating exhibitions dedicated to her life. These showcases became community gathering spots for those wanting to celebrate her memory and appreciate the kindness she had shared with everyone. This tragedy united the community and highlighted the fragility and vulnerability of human life. So the sentence for Jonathan Brown marked the end of one chapter, but the memory of a dream cut short too soon remained forever in the hearts of the people. This story concluded with not only a condemnation, but also a lesson on the importance of vigilance and unity in combating such invisible threats. As each sunset gathers friends and family, casting a serene silence over the streets, the town continues to thrive, but with newfound values and lessons learned from a harrowing tragedy. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new videos, and feel free to share your thoughts on how we can work together to create a safer and kinder community. Take care of each other.